Good morning. So yesterday we discussed about yesterday's class was about the pain. So in pain we know what are the different types of pain and what is the tract which carries the pain and different uh, types of pain, and then so few applied aspects. So all these things we learned. So today's class will discuss about the few things regarding the pain. So that is the gate control theory. So this is very important. So this gate control theory, before discussing, so I will just mention 2 points. That is inhibition of pain, that is called as analgesia. So inhibition of pain can be achieved by the two mechanisms. One is stimulation produced analgesia, and two by release of the second one is by release of the endogenous opioid peptide. So we discussed yesterday that the endogenous opioid system. So in first one, that is stimulation produced analgesia. So this is achieved by two mechanisms, that is one is by the segmental inhibition and the supraspinal inhibition. So segmental inhibition, under segmental inhibition, so we this gate control theory comes under the segmental inhibition. So stimulation of nerves in the same segment in which pain is felt can relieve such pain. So that is the thing about the segmental inhibition. Stimulation of nerves in the same segment in which pain is felt can relieve such pain. So it can be achieved by activation of group A afferent nerve fibers or stimulation of the dorsal column of the spinal cord, which in turn activates segmental collaterals. So this is explained on the basis of the gate control theory. So according to theory, in this diagram you can see the T cells, that is central transmission cells, and SG cells, that is the substantia gelatinosa cells. So according to this theory, gate control theory, we have the pain is determined by the three system. So the three system, they interact with each other and then it determines the pain. So this system is present in the dorsal horn of the spinal cord. So the systems, one is the T cells I mentioned, and then SG cells, and the third one is the afferent pattern in the dorsal column. So first we see about the T cells. So the T cells which is present in the dorsal horn, when it activates, it activate the lateral spinothalamic tract. So this activates this system. So it is responsible for perception of pain. So when T cells gets activated, so then the lateral spinothalamic tract, so they stimulate this activates the lateral spinothalamic tract. That means the pain is carried to the central nervous system. The afferent pattern in the dorsal column, so this system acts as the central control trigger that influence the regulating properties of the gate control system. You can see in the diagram L and S input. So L means large peripheral fibers, that is the touch fibers, whereas S is the small peripheral fibers, that is the pain fibers. So when there is activation of large peripheral fibers, they stimulates both T cells and SG cells. Whereas when there is activation of small peripheral fibers, there will be stimulation of only T cells, whereas inhibition of SG cells. Then you see about the cells of substantia gelatinosa, that is SG cells in the dorsal horn. So this system regulates the afferent pattern before they influence the T cells. So activity in the SG cells is increased by the large fibers, and activity in the SG cells is decreased by the small fibers. So SG cells inhibit activity in the afferent fiber terminals of both large and small fibers. Therefore, stimulation of T cells by large fibers is rapidly cut off by negative feedback by the SG cells, and conversely, stimulation of T cells by the small fibers will be increased by positive feedback through the SG cells. So thus the dorsal horn is the gate which pain impulses reach the lateral spinothalamic system. That is, when there is stimulation of large fibers means that closes the gate. So when there is stimulation of small fibers means that opens the gate. So this is called the gate control theory of pain. So this is the diagram. So the dorsal horn acts as the gate through which the pain impulses are carried to the central nervous system. Okay, these are all yesterday we discussed. Okay, so we'll see about a little thing about the headache. Headache means these are the type of pain which is referred to the surface of the head due to some any disorders from the deep structures present in the deep head structures present inside the head, and above tentorium to the frontal region and below tentorium they causes occipital headache. So above tentorium causes frontal headache, whereas below tentorium causes the occipital headache. So these are usually arises from the sensitive parts of the brain, that is dura, tentorium and blood vessels. So intracranial headache, it is again divided into intracranial headache and the extracranial headache. So some headaches, they result from pain stimuli arising inside the cranium, but others result from pain arising outside the cranium. So intracranial headache, again it is divided into meningitis, low CSF pressure, migraine and alcoholic headache. And the extracranial headache, that is muscle spasm, stress, or if there is any nasal and paranasal sinus infections and eye disorders. So this is extracranial headache. So intracranial headache, pain sensitive areas in the cranial vault. The brain tissue themselves are almost totally insensitive to pain. Even cutting or electrically stimulating the sensory areas of the cerebral cortex, they occasionally causes pain. But the sensitive areas, meninges, dura, okay, if there is any inflammation, if there is any infection of the meninges, so inflammation of the meninges including the dura, sensitive areas of the dura, they causes severe headache, and headache caused by the low CSF fluid pressure. So when there is CSF pressure decreases, so then you can see headache. And the migraine headache, so the migraine headache is a special type of headache. They occurs usually due to the vasodilation is the that causes, sorry, vasospasm. Okay, vasospasm of some of the arteries of the head. So this vasospasm, say, they causes the pain, migraine, headache, and then alcoholic headache. So we have seen that after alcohol consumption, that few they experience headache. Maybe it is likely that alcohol, because it is toxic to the tissues, they directly irritates the meninges and causes intracranial pain. So these are the causes for the headache. And if extracranial, that is, if there is any muscle spasm, so many muscles are present in the head. So when the spasm of the muscles, so the muscles which are attached to the scalp and neck muscles which are attached to the occiput, so if there is a spasm, we can see the headache. And the headache usually caused by the infection of nasal and paranasal sinuses. And also if there is any eye disorders as well, we can see the headache. So that's about the pain. So now we'll see the thermal sensation. So thermal sensation are cold and is carried or is sensed by the cold and warm receptors. So the human beings can perceive different gradations of cold and heat, from freezing cold to cool to indifferent to warm to hot to burning hot. So these are the different cold sensations, cold to hot sensations, cold and warm sensations. So the pain receptors, okay, so the pain receptors are stimulated when there is extreme cold or when there is extreme hot. Thermal gradations are discriminated by at least three type of receptors: cold receptors, warmth receptors, and pain receptors. The pain receptors are stimulated by extreme degrees of heat or cold. So the cold and warmth receptors are located immediately under the skin at discrete separated spots. So in most areas of the body there are 3 to 10 times as many cold spots as warmth spots, and the number also different in different areas. That is, in the lips it is about 15 to 25 cold spots, whereas in finger it is just 3 to 5, and in the surfaces of the tongue it is 1, okay, some to 1 cold spots. So the definitive cold receptors, however, has been identified. It is a special small type A delta myelinated nerve endings, so that branches several times. The signals are transmitted from these receptors at a velocity of about 20 meter per second. Some cold sensations are believed to be transmitted in C fibers as well. And the mechanism of the stimulation of the thermal receptors, that also we should know. The mechanism of the stimulation of cold receptors. So the mechanism, it is believed that they are stimulated by changes in their metabolic rates, and that these changes result from the fact that the temperature alters the rate of intracellular chemical reactions more than twofold. So this is the mechanism. So there will be inside the cell, so whenever there is change in the temperature, so there will be intracellular chemical reaction, that alters the intracellular chemical reactions. So that is how the mechanism of stimulation of this thermal receptors. So how it is carried, it's already mentioned that it is carried by the tracts, anterolateral tract, that is the mainly the tract of Lisser. So on entering the spinal cord, so it travels and then terminate in the lamina 1, 2 and 3 of the dorsal horns. Then after a small amount of processing by one or more cord neurons, the signals enter long ascending thermal fibers that cross to the opposite anterolateral sensory tracts and terminates in the thalamus. Then from the thalamus it goes to the somatosensory cortex. So the second order neurons not only ends in the thalamus, it also gives collaterals to the reticular areas of the brain. So that is how these sensations are carried. Then one more important diagram. So this diagram shows the discharge frequencies at different skin temperatures of a cold pain fiber, a cold fiber, a warmth fiber and a heat pain fiber. So stimulation of thermal receptors. So all these receptors, how the shows the effects of different temperatures on the responses of 4 types of nerve fibers. This figure shows the effects of different temperatures on the responses of 4 types of nerve fibers. So we have a pain fiber that is stimulated by the extreme cold, and we have a cold fiber, a warmth fiber and a pain fiber which is stimulated by extreme heat. So these fibers, they respond differently at different levels of temperature. So for example, in the very cold region, so only the cold fibers are stimulated. So if the temperature little bit increases to plus 10 to 15 degrees centigrade, so the cold pain impulses cease and the cold receptors begin to be stimulated, reaching peak stimulation at 25 to 25 degrees centigrade and fading out slightly above 40 degrees centigrade. About 30 degrees centigrade, the warmth receptors begin to be stimulated, but these also fade at about 49 to 50 degree centigrade. So when finally at around 45 degrees centigrade, you can see in the diagram the heat pain fibers are stimulated. So and they goes on increases. So this is one diagram which shows the effects of the different temperature on the responses of different types of receptors for temperature. So that is about the thermal sensations. So you should know all these things. And other senses are the itch and tickle. So itch sensation is irritative skin sensation in skin disease, so produced by a relatively mild stimulation of the skin. So it originates from stimulation of free nerve endings in the skin, so that mediating in the skin and the nerve pathway, the C group of fibers mediating itch accompanies fibers carrying pain in the lateral spinothalamic tract of the spinal cord. So like pain, it originates from stimulation of free nerve endings in the skin, and the nerve pathway mediating itch accompanies the same pain pathway. So this is stimulated by the mechanical and chemical stimuli and also histamine. So I already mentioned that C fibers. So tickling, that is a pleasurable sensation. So this is about the other sensations. And other sensations you should know about. I was mentioning about the tactile discrimination, that is the ability or to distinguish two points as separate when they are lying close. That is the ability of a person to identify two two closely lying objects as separate. So that is called tactile discrimination. Whereas stereognosis means the ability to identify the familiar objects by close without looking at them. That means by closing eyes, so you have to identify the known objects, for example pencil, pen, keys, like that. So this the you can identify the objects by the sensation of touch and pressure. So that is called stereognosis. So loss of stereognosis is called a stereognosis. So that is an early sign of damage to the parietal lobe. So you can see a stereognosis. So this is about the other sensations, little about other sensations. And then you should know about the vibration sense. Okay, so vibration sense. So if you place a vibrating tuning fork, so then you should feel the vibratory sensation. So the sensation is the receptors are touch pressure receptors. So especially the Pacinian corpuscles and the Meissner's corpuscles. So the ability to appreciate mechanical vibrations, that is called palästhesia, so may be lost in various diseases such as Tape's dorsalis, diabetes mellitus, vitamin deficiencies. So these are all other sensations of the other sensations. And you should know that the sensations from the head is carried by the trigeminal nerve. So okay, and applied aspects you should know about the hyperalgesia, hypoalgesia, all those things regarding pain sensations. So that's about the sensory tracts and the sensations which are carried, and the different aspects, that is applied aspects of the pain and all. So we discussed about the ascending tract, that is the dorsal mediolemniscal tract, that is fasciculus gracilis and fasciculus cuneatus, and we discussed about the lateral and anterior spinothalamic tract. So in the tract, so you should know how many order of neurons are present and where it is terminating. So all these things you should know. What is the somatosensory cortex? So how the different areas of the body is represented in the somatosensory cortex. And you should know the fibers, whether it's that the right side of the sensations is presented on the left side in the brain. So that means they are crossing. So anterior lateral spinothalamic tract, when it enters the spinal cord, they immediately crosses to the opposite side, whereas the dorsal medial lemniscal tract, they won't cross immediately, but when it enters into the medulla, so from the medulla they will cross, forming the internal arcuate fibers. So all these things you should know, and what are all the sensations carried by these things. So in pain is very important topic, so you should know about the different theories: convergence theory, facilitation theory, then gate control theory. So all these things you should know regarding referred pain and how pain is carried, and what are all the different. So this is just I'm just briefing up so what we discussed. So apart from all this, so there are other two tracts. So that is the dorsal spinocerebellar tract and ventral spinocerebellar tract. Okay, one second. So I'll just go to that slide. Yeah, so This is the dorsal spinocerebellar tract and the ventral spinocerebellar tract. That means from the spinal cord to the cerebellum. So this is about the. So we'll discuss. I'll just mention about these two tracts. So the dorsal spinocerebellar tract. So origin from the axons of the first order neurons in the posterior root ganglia. So situation, extent and termination. So whenever the tract is asked, you should mention about the situation, extent and termination. In the spinal cord, the fiber ends round the Clark's column of cells on the same side. That is the first relay station. So the second order neuron fibers enter the lateral white column, occupy the most peripheral part lateral to the spinothalamic tract. So the tract makes its appearance in the segment C7 to T6. In medulla, fibers enter the inferior cerebellar peduncle of the same side and end in the vermis of the cerebellum, from where the third order neurons arise. So its axons passes to the anterior and posterior lobes of the cerebellar cortex. So this is about the dorsal spinocerebellar tract. So the first order neurons end on the Clark's column. Second order neurons end on the vermis of the cerebellum. From there, the third order neurons passes to the anterior and posterior lobes of the cerebellar cortex. So that is about the dorsal spinocerebellar tract. So it carries unconscious kinesthetic sensations. So that is about the dorsal spinocerebellum. So this sensation is responsible for the regulation of body posture, balance and coordination of skilled movements. So the first order neuron, so from the periphery it ends in the Clark's column of cells of the same side. Then the second order neurons starts here and ends in the vermis of the cerebellum, and from there the third order neurons starts and ends in the anterior and posterior lobes of the cerebellum. So responsible for unconscious kinesthetic impulses. So next, the ventral spinocerebellar tract, it's also called Gower's tract. So this origin from the axons of the first order neurons in the posterior root ganglia. So the second order neurons arises from the Clark cells of the both the sides. So in the spinal cord, the second order neurons, they arises from the Clark's column of both the sides. So the second order neurons crosses to the opposite side and ascend up to the level of the red nucleus without termination. At red nucleus, fibers enter the superior cerebellar peduncle of same side to end in the vermis of the cerebellum. So from here the third order neurons arises and goes to the anterior lobe of the cerebellar cortex. So that is about the ventral spinocerebellar tract. So the first order neurons, they start from the axons of the first order neurons, it in the posterior root of in the ganglia, that is the origin. Then in the spinal cord, the second order neurons arises from the Clark's column of cells. The second order neurons cross to the opposite side and ascend up to the level of red nucleus without termination. At red nucleus, fibers enter the superior cerebellar peduncle of same side to end in the vermis of cerebellum. From here, the third order neuron starts and ends in the superior ends in the anterior lobe of the cortex, and the function is as that of the dorsal spinocerebellar tract. This is also responsible for the so this is the diagram which shows the tract. So anterior spinocerebellar tract and the dorsal posterior cerebellar tract. So from the spinal cord and ends in the cerebellum. So this is about the ascending tracts. So these two tracts are responsible for unconscious kinesthetic movements, unconscious kinesthetic impulses. It carries unconscious kinesthetic impulses. So the dorsal is the first order neurons. First order neurons end on the Clark's column. The second order neurons from the Clark's column ends on the vermis of the same side. The third order neurons from the vermis into the anterior and posterior lobes of the cerebellum. So that is about the dorsal. Whereas the ventral horns, so same thing, ends, the first order neurons ends in the Clark's column of the cells. The second order neurons arises from the Clark's column of the both the sides, and then ends in the vermis of the cerebellum, and from here the third order neuron starts and ends in the anterior lobe of the cerebellum. So it carries both unconscious kinesthetic impulses. So this is about the ascending tracts, and if you have any doubt, you can please you can ask me. Okay, thank you.